Good Saturday afternoon. It is October the 28th, 2017. Welcome to my November forecast video. Right now, you're looking at what the month of October looked like so far. This is only, of course, we still have a couple of days left, so this could actually change just a little bit, but for the majority, it's not going to change a whole lot. Maybe the Midwest will change a little bit with this really below average regime moving into the Midwest as I speak, but this is not going to knock down the above average temperatures by any means. Once the month is over, I still think it's going to look fairly similar to what you are seeing right now. This is something that I think is going to carry on into November and maybe even into the beginning of winter. This really warm eastern United States, the cool western United States pattern. And so we'll start to talk about that right now. This is not the winter forecast video. That comes out here in around 2 to 3 weeks, but this is the November forecast video, and it is going to have some components that are very similar to the winter forecast video. So kind of pay attention very closely because I'm going to be throwing a lot at you in a few short minutes. So this is right now the 500 millibar geopotential height anomaly. Right now, this was back on Wednesday. This is showing a trough in the east. Of course, we saw those cooler temperatures back around midweek. And we also are looking at a trough in the Bering Sea. When we see a trough or a ridge in the Bering Sea, whatever's right here where I'm circling my mouse, usually correlates to what we'll see in the eastern United States where we live around 17 to 21 days down the road. And so you're seeing a trough right here, which would actually correlate to some cool weather moving in around the second week of November. We move on into the 29th. We still see that trough there, but we're starting to see some higher heights move into that area. So this is once we get towards around November the 3rd, and bam, we see a ridge, a very strong ridge taking hold in the North Pacific around the Bering Sea, which correlates to maybe a ridge moving back into the area around maybe the third week of November. So it looks like we're going to see at least a mix of cool and warm temperatures, at least in the first week of November, as we see that transition from this cool pattern we are in as I speak into a more warmer pattern as we go towards the end of this week into the first half of at least the first week of November. And then we see at least maybe the second week, maybe some cooler than average temperatures trying to move back in. But this would be correlating right here to the third week of November, actually showing some warmer than average temperatures if we see that strong of a ridge. And it still has its place held around November the 13th, which puts us even further out into the month of November, telling us that we are going to be seeing that ridging in the eastern United States take hold. So, of course, this is a forecast. This is not going to be exact. We might actually see a trough around this time. This could always change, but this is something that I'm watching as we go throughout the next couple of days. The trends in the GFS model, which is what you're seeing right here, is been to show this ridge in the Bering Sea coming back, which later down the road shows the ridge in our part of the country moving back. So that's something very important. The European also shows the same thing around November the 11th, correlating to the third week of November of a ridge in the east. The Siberia snowfall right now, it's off to a great start. It's above average, which means that it could actually correlate to cooler than average temperatures for the winter, but we also have other factors. We'll look at that, the winter forecast video, in a few weeks, but this is also going to play a role into November as well. Over the last 6 days, which is what you're seeing here, this is the 22nd, as you move your mouse over and then back down and back over, you're looking at it going further out into time. So the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, because it is hard to see the date, 25th, 26th, and then the 27th. And we've noticed a little bit of an increase in the last 3 days over here in the south and western portion of Asia and Siberia. What did we see last year? Well, this is the 28th, the 29th, and the 30th of October. Between the 29th and the 30th, we had a big snowstorm that covered a large portion of the south and the western part of Siberia and Asia that correlated to a rapid increase in snowfall in that area. And this is also something that correlated to our warmth that we had last winter in our area, the number one warmest winter out of Paducah, Kentucky on record. We saw so much snow as an increase, saw such an increase in snowfall at the very end of the month, and I think it was because of that one snowstorm that happened right here. I'm not blaming all of the warmth that we had last winter on that one snowstorm, but I do think that it did have a lot to do with it. We did have a rapid increase, which correlated to a lot of cool Siberian air coming off of the coast into the Bering Sea, and it was good for the first half of the winter. We saw December was off to a great cold and even a little bit of a snowy start. but it eventually worked that cool air over into the Gulf of Alaska, which correlated to a trough eventually going into the western United States for around the end of December and on into the rest of your winter, and that led to a ridge in the eastern United States. So this might be something that we see again. This rapid increase that we could be looking for us might be showing the same thing. What it also did last year was it strengthened the Pacific jet, which later down the road into the heart of the winter, when the warmth actually began to show up, it was when that Pacific jet was really starting to play a big role and was flooding the eastern United States with all kinds of warm temperatures, and it seemed like it was never going to end, right? Well, here's what it looks like, the weather map, the forecast for the 31st of October. You can tell that there is a big Siberian low right here forecasting some snow and some rain in the area that we see right here that we don't have much snow in, but it was also the same area that we saw that rapid increase in last year. So if we saw a rapid increase in this region last year and it led to some warmer than average temperatures for at least the month of November, and we are seeing maybe the forecast showing the same thing for right here in the next couple of days, then we could be looking at the exact same solution. That's what my point is right here. My point is last year, we saw that rapid increase in southwestern Siberia, southwestern Asia, whichever way you want to look at it. And if this snowstorm actually comes true, we could be looking at the exact same thing happening in southwestern Siberia, southwestern Asia, where there's currently hardly any snowfall. So this is a very important factor because this could play a role into the month of November big time. It could also play a role into winter. I think that the effects from it are going to eventually be felt in winter, but some of them could really be played around with in November, which is what this forecast video is all about, the month of November and what we could see. Usually Siberian snowfall, when it's above average, leads to colder than average temperatures in the eastern United States. It's been proven, scientifically proven, in fact, but I do believe, I do have a theory that there can be too much of a good thing. And in this case, there was last year. And I think that that is going to possibly happen again this year. The month of November last year, by the way, was above average. And it also had the same thing happen in Siberia at the very end of the month. Here's another factor, the SOI. And this is showing us really over the last 17 days. Your dates are on the far left. But we're looking for this column right here that I'm circling my mouse right here. When we see a rapid fall, we're looking at around 20 days down the road, a trough in the eastern United States, which means colder than average temperatures. But when we see a rise, a rapid rise, we're usually looking at above average temperatures in the eastern United States around 20 days down the road. Really, if you look over the last 17 days, notice our numbers, we haven't really been looking at any real rapid rises and falls. I've seen in cases where it's fell 40 decimal places, or at least 40 whole numbers in like a day or two, and that's a rapid fall. That's what I mean by a rapid fall. But when it falls by 5, 10, that's not really a rapid fall. But the only fall that I can find is really the 24th, from the 23rd actually to the 26th. We saw around a 16 whole number drop. So this could actually correlate to that cool down that I mentioned, possibly around the second part of the second week of November. This could be correlated to it as well, just like the Bering Sea showed. Otherwise than that, we don't really see any rapid rises or falls to really have a whole lot of impact from it. The MJO, we had a lot of impact from it from the month of October as it went into phases 4, 5, 6, and 7 very strongly. But if it's right, the European, it shows it going back into neutral territory, which would show really no big plays from the MJO. We look at the stratospheric warming. We do see a weak stratospheric warming event around this time right now as of this recording, which also correlates to a little bit of a cool down around that second week of November. But I do think that with the stratospheric warming event not being that strong, the SOI not really having that big of a fall between the 23rd and the 26th, and our Bering Sea not showing a very strong trough in that area, and eventually the higher heights coming back in, really tells me that it's not going to be that big of a cool down, if any cool down. It might not even be below average. It might just be slightly cooler temperatures than what we see before it. So that second week of November, it's kind of a toss-up, but if I had to lean anywhere, it would go with below average temperatures. Here is a look at our sea surface temperature anomalies. We see the NAO is kind of mixed right now. No real strong below or above average anomalies at the sea surface. We see some cooler than average temperatures at the surface of the North Pacific around the Bering Sea, which would actually attract more cold troughs in that area, which would down the road put troughs in the eastern United States. But like I said, last year that happened at the same time. But we saw so much cool Siberian air coming off from that rapid increase of snow at the end of the month of October that it eventually became too much of a good thing and flooded the entire North Pacific with plenty of cool sea surface temperature anomalies, which eventually put a trough in the west and a ridge in the east. So I think that might be, shaping up for us once again. We see a lot of cool sea surface temperatures just west of Australia, which would actually be a good thing if we wanted cool temperatures, but our La Nina is also coming on at the same time, which argues for a southeast ridge. So we have more components at the sea surface level that are arguing for warmth for November than we do cold. And here is what the Nino 3.4 index is doing. It's almost about to be classified as an official La Nina, around 2 to 3 more weeks of it being below the average mark, then it will be classified as an official La Nina. Here is my analogs that I have for this month, and 1955 had a negative PNA and a negative PDO. Basically had a cool North Pacific, which, like I just mentioned a minute ago, I think we're heading in that direction thanks to the Siberian increase in snowfall at the end. And the 1964 had actually a mixed NAO, which means average. It also had a mixed AO, and it had a negative PDO and negative PNA. So that one was a really good year. Our best year was 1985, which I weighted 3 times in the temperature anomalies. I weighted it just twice in the precipitation anomalies. And I weighted it 3 times up here because I do believe that it was a very good year. It almost had the perfect forecast that I wanted to see, with a southeast ridge causing some warm temperatures in the southeast and the core of it centered in the southeast. And then I like to see the cold locked up into the northern plains, the northern United States. And 1973 was also a very good year as well. It had a negative PNA, a negative PDO, and also a neutral AO, a mixed AO. So it was a good year as well. And we weighted the 1985 year twice in the precipitation anomalies, and we see a active storm track right where I wanted it to be, because we have the cold right here, the warmth right here, the storm track in between, and it is shaping up perfect. So it couldn't have been any better. And we see a very good increase in moisture coming in off of the western United States, which is from that strong Pacific jet that I mentioned, thanks to the Siberian cool air coming off. So the November forecast, to sum it all up, if you paid attention closely, you would notice that there was more signals pointing towards above average temperatures for the eastern United States than there were below average temperatures. And I do think that we're going to see some wild swings. When you have the cold, a very strong core of cold and a very strong core of warmth just right across the road from each other pretty much, you're going to have some wild swings. I mean, the cold will be ready to push and the warmth will be ready to rise. So you're going to have some back and forth. That's always going to happen, especially in a month like November, where it's a transition month from from fall to winter. And we see that wild swing really because the MJO variability. We saw a lot of variability in the month of October, and I do think that eventually it is going to come back out of its neutral phase and come back into phases such as 2, 3, and 4, and maybe wrap around once again. So I do think that the MJO is going to vary a lot, which would vary our precipitation and our temperatures. The SOI variability, we saw a lot of that, the ups and downs, but really no huge ups and downs, but really it was just a lot of back and forth with it as well. And the cool Siberian air leading to a flooded U.S. with warmth, and the neutral NAO, AO, and negative PNA, PDO also are going to be playing a role into those above average temperatures. We see above average precipitation due to that active Ohio Valley storm track and the MJO variability, as well as that active Pacific jets. So that is a good thing. A good thing we're not looking at any sort of drought trying to take shape. We're looking at above average precipitation and above average temperatures. And guys, before long, we will be looking at some snowflakes flying out of the air, but we have to get through at least the month of November. Maybe we'll see some snow in December, but right now it doesn't look like November is going to hold any kind of cold or any kind of anything really to point towards any kind of snow because of the pattern that is shaping up. Now, above average temperatures does not mean that we are looking at just all above average days. There will be cold periods in there. It's going to be hard to find them, but I will find them, and I will let you know when some of those are going to come. But for the majority of the month, expect warmer than average temperatures, a lot of wild swings of back and forth. and then eventually we'll be ready for the winter forecast, which comes out here in just a couple of weeks.